Alright, in this tutorial we're going to take a look at how to connect all of the blend shapes that we set up in the previous tutorial to our blend shape control sitting here at the top of our character's head. And in order to do that, we're going to make use of a feature called driven keys. Now, driven keys might be familiar to a lot of people out there. It's kind of an introductory sort of rigging concept. But driven keys are really powerful because they allow us to take one attribute or parameter in Maya and use its value or its range of values to control the attribute or parameter of another series of values. And so if we want to kind of make sense of that, if we take a look at the blend shape control that we have set up here, and I have all of my different little options in here, like browse down left, if I just middle mouse click and drag here in the viewport, you can see that I'm increasing and decreasing the value of browse down left. And that is an attribute that I am interactively changing. Now, depending on the value of this, we want that to control the activation of the corresponding blend shape of browse down left. So if this is at 0, we don't want to see the browse down left. If this is all the way up at 10, we want to see it at full. And anywhere in between there, we want to see it proportionally that amount. So in order to do this, I am going to, like I said, make use of driven keys. But before I even set that up, there is one little thing I want to make sure of inside of Maya. And that is to make sure that all of my keys are set to linear when I create them. Because a driven key is a type of keying. It is a value that essentially functions inside the graph editor. And as such, it will be affected by the type of keys that are set to default in Maya. So I've just clicked on my scene settings options or preferences down here, the little guy running away from the gear icon. And if I come to settings, animation, I will find that I have weighted tangents on, which is good. And my default in and out tangents are set to linear, which I want as well. This is so that as I increase and decrease my values here, it's a consistent a predictable change as opposed to having a, let's say, spline or flat tangent sort of approach to it, where as I increase it from 0 to 1, I might get less of a change than if I increased it from 1 to 2. And you have to kind of look at the graph to see that, but if you're familiar with working with spline tangents, you'll recognize that there is sort of a easing out and easing in that happens with them. All right, so we're just going to use linear tangents, so save. And now what I want to do is to set up my driven keys, and in order to do that, I can come to my animation menu set, key, and set driven key, set. And this is going to open up the driven key window. So there are two things that I want to load in here. The first is the attribute that's going to be driving. This is going to be the thing that's in control. So that is going to be my blend shape control, because this is the thing that I'm going to change, and as I change this, it affects a change on something else, and that something else is going to be the driven object. All right, so with blend shape control selected, I'm going to click on load driver. And now you can see here that I have the list of all the drivers in the scene. There's actually only ever one driver at a time, and a list of all of the available attributes that I can select from here in order to set this up. Now the driven object is going to be the blend shape node itself. And so in order to find that, there's two ways that I can go about it. One way is to simply click on my receiver head, and my receiver head has the blend shape node attached to it. It's a BS-JSON head. But I can't just easily select that from here, because if I chose load driven right now, what I would get is actually just selecting the head just there by itself, which is what I wanted to do. If I just select the head there, I just receive the translates and rotates and all those values. I can, however, go here and inside the inputs I can select BS-JSON head there, and that's my actual blend shape node. If I choose load driven now, it's actually loaded both receiver and the BS-JSON head. This is not normally the way that I actually do it. I'm just going to show you another way that I can do it, which is to, again, select the head, to hit Control A to go into my attribute editor. And if I just click on the little arrows up here at the top, which gives me all the list of the nodes attached to this, if I click on BS-JSON head here, this is my blend shape node, and choose select, that's selected that node. You'll notice that the actual head geometry itself has been deselected, but the blend shape node itself is selected. So if I click load driven now, I get just that in the driven window. One final way you can do this is to come into your shape editor, and if you just click on the actual blend shape up here at the top, which contains everything else, you can just hit load driven there as well. So just a few different ways to do the same thing, and it's really up to you depending on what windows you have open and what's easiest for you. So if we go back to our blend shape control here, and I mentioned before that we'd look at browse down left. Browse down left is going to be correspondingly up here as well. I'm just ignoring browse down for now because that's something that I would actually probably build in after this. So I'm just going to try to focus on some of the simpler options to begin with, and then we could worry about fitting everything else in later if we wanted to do a multiple shape type of setup. But browse down left is going to correspond to a particular shape that we created over here as one of our blend shape geometries. And so I would need to go in here now on my blend shape node and find where is that corresponding input. So if I just scroll down here, I want to find browse down. So this is going to be eyebrows lower left. So it's slightly different naming, but basically the same thing. Browse down left, eyebrow lower left. All right, so those two are really the things I want to connect together. So what's happening right now is when browse down left is at 0, what I'm telling this setup to create is that when this is at 0, I want my eyebrow lower shape to be at 0 as well. Its influence to be at 0. So I'm just going to scroll in here so we can better see the result that we're getting here. So this is just our default shape now. So I'll press key. So that sets up that relationship. Now, if I take this and I increase its value to 10, and I'm going to come here and just click on BS-JSON head, and that way that actually selects the blend shape node. I can come in here now and find that corresponding eyebrow lower left shape. So eyebrow lower left shape is actually kind of helpful here because it's now in blue. Same thing happens here inside the shape editor as well. You'll see that it gets visible here in blue. So you could actually just increase that value there to 1, right? So what's happening now is if I look at this, when I increase this value to 10, I want the corresponding value here of eyebrow lower left shape to be at 1. Now that's not really showing up here because I made that change inside the shape editor. They don't actually correspond together. That's a little bit confusing actually. I never noticed that, but they're not really corresponding to each other. But if you just make the change in one location, make sure to keep doing it in that same location, I guess. So what I'm going to do now is just press key, and if we go back to our blend shape control here, now what we can check is as I decrease the value here, is that going to stay in the same value? And you know what? Something has happened here where it didn't actually stay. So that's kind of interesting. Let's just go back and check that. So it looks like there's a slight error that's happening. I'm going to go back to eyebrows down lower left as at 0. This value here is at 0, so that's fine. Let's just go back here to setting this back to 10. Right, and set this value to 1, because these only go up to 1. Key, all right. Let's just see, is it going to work this time? Yes, it worked this time. Somewhere along the line, maybe it was because I was going back and forth between the shape editor and what was happening over here in the attribute editor. Something just got incorrectly connected there. But now it works. So as I drag browse down left all the way up to 10, you'll notice that it is causing my my eyebrow lower left shape to activate. And in fact, if we took a look at the graph editor and I came in here and I clicked on the blend shape control, actually sorry, the blend shape itself, you'll see that there is in fact actually technically some animation that's been created here that goes from a value of 0 to 10, which is corresponding to the values that I have here on the blend shape control, and it is correspondingly going from over the range of 0 to 10. It's going from a value of 0 to 1. The value of 1 right there and the value of 0 right there. So we're going to do this for basically every blend shape that we have. So if I were to go in and take a look at the next one in my list here, right? This would be inner brows down left. I can actually separate my brows into an inner versus a outer shape. And depending on how you've set up your blend shapes, you might have done that already. But what I could do is I could just go to brows down right. And instead of doing these more individual ones, I might just pop on down to brows down right to basically create the corresponding version for brows down left. And so brows down right is going to match up with eyebrow lower right, if I can find that here, eyebrow lower right. There we go, eyebrow lower right shape. As you notice that I actually do have some of these eyebrow lower inner left and outer left as well. Those would match up to these more individual blend shapes. So, but we're not going to do that here. We're just going to do these two for now. So I'll key that at 0, increase this to a value of 10, come in here to the blend shape, and we'll find eyebrow lower right shape, pull that one all the way up to a value of 1. And now if we just take a look at this, as we pull back and forth, there we go. So if I actually took both of these together now and I just interactively increased their value, you can see that I am now getting those blend shapes kicking in there. And I would do this for all of my blend shapes, for anything that you've set up. So I have gone through and I've created quite a few blend shapes here, maybe more than what you have. And any one that I have created, I have made sure to keep nice and open here so that I can make that connection. For any ones that I haven't, that I basically have indicated that I might make, but that I haven't actually created yet, I've sort of locked the values so that it's kind of like a visual notation to myself that I haven't created this blend shape yet. If I do end up creating it, then I just simply unlock the value, and then I can start linking it in as well. So as you go through here, you can just sort of, do one at a time. I usually like to start at the top and work my way down. Hopefully I have created everything before I do this, but if you haven't created every one, then just, connect the ones that you have created, and if you kind of want to make that same visual notation to yourself about the ones that you haven't created yet, you can simply just right-click on one of these values and choose Lock Selected, and that way it just creates that little gray lock there. It means that you can't change the value, so that value is technically locked, and then you can just unlock it when you want to open it up again. So that kind of leaves me with the final connection that I need to make here, which has to be between my between the receiver node and the actual head itself, because right now, as I make these changes for these two blend shapes, for instance, it's only affecting my my receiver head. Has nothing to do with what's happening over here on my my main head. So let's just try to set this up. This is going to be as simple as it was to create all of the other blend shapes, basically. So I'm just going to pop back here and let's set those back to 0. Let's go ahead and select our receiver head, and then we're going to shift select our actual main head here for the rig, and we will go to either animation or rigging, doesn't matter, deform, blend shape, and options. All right, and let's pull over my blend shape options here. And I'm going to go ahead and call this BS for blend shape, receiver shapes. And I think that our basic automatic deformation order should be fine. Essentially, everything here should be fine as a default. So we'll create. And now what I need to do is just simply go in and activate my receiver. So this is the value here. If I click on my BS receiver shapes, activate the receiver here. And now what that's done is it's taken all of the values that I have over here and applies it to this head. Which means that if I go in here and I turn on my my controls and I grab this and I choose my browse down left and I activate it over here, notice how, if I just make it easier to see, I can now see it over here as well, right? And browse down right, because these are the only two that I set up. You can see it over here as well, which is great. All right, perfect. So there is one last little thing I'd like to change, and that just has to do with the order in which these inputs are stacked here. Right now my receiver shapes are coming in after, actually technically before my blend shape, I think is how this works if we read it from top to bottom. But really I want my my skin cluster, this is the skinning itself, to be at the top, because I think if it's in this order we can end up with some errors if I'm not careful. Yeah, see right now doesn't seem to be skinned properly. So let's just go back and change the order that we have here. Now what I can do is just simply right click on my geometry, and if I come down to inputs and I come all the way down to all inputs, we have our list of inputs here. Now this is not necessarily all that intuitive, especially in the way that you move things around. But if you actually middle mouse click on one of these words, blend shapes here, for instance, blend shape receiver shapes, and just middle mouse click and drag that beneath skin cluster, this has actually technically changed the order in which these are calculated. So if I click on the mesh again, you'll see that it updates. So if I rotate now, you'll see that the head goes correctly with it. I see that the lacrimals have been left behind. They obviously haven't been parented, so I can probably fix that here at the end of this tutorial as well. But we'll worry about that in a moment. Now if I just click on that value again, browse down right, just make sure that these are still calculating properly, and you can see that, yep, they are. Browse down right and browse down left. So that's one way to avoid there being any issues with the order of the inputs. And finally, the one unanticipated issue, which is simply the lacrimals, which are pretty easy to fix. If I just turn off my controls again and go ahead, I'm going to turn off the geometry here, and let me just grab the two lacrimals, actually one at a time, and turn on the visibility of the joints. I will go ahead and you can parent constraint this to either the head control, or you can constrain it to the head end. It's really up to you. I'm just going to constrain it to head end. So I'll grab the head end, I'll grab the left lacrimal, and it's going to go to constrain, parent, maintain offset is on, add, and I'll click on head end again, and I'll grab the other lacrimal here and hit G to repeat the previous command. So now, if this is all working properly, hopefully it is, as I rotate the head backwards, the lacrimals are going along with it, which is great, and they should be correspondingly going with the rest of the head. So fantastic. So we have everything set up now. I just haven't gone through and set up all the blend shapes here, but I will do that in another, well, I won't do that in another video. I will do that off camera, basically, because it's just a lot of the same. It's really the same process over and over and over again. So I don't really want to spend all that time showing you how to do the same thing over and over again. So in the next tutorial, we are going to take a look at how to set up some of the rigging for the eyes themselves. So see you then.